Okay, so let's talk about how to visualize amounts. So this is anytime that you have counts, whether that's number of people, objects, money, whatever. So I'm calling it hard counts here to just help you differentiate between this and percentages, which can also be visualized using these things, but it's a little different. So we have, generally speaking, we have bar plots, we have grouped and stacked bar plots, and we have the dot plots and the heat maps as our options. For this section and the next few sections going through these different ones, I'm going to talk about the theory part of it from that book and then switch over to Tableau and kind of go back and forth between them as I go through each one. So make sure that you go ahead and pull out the employee ratings one, which I'll switch over to that real quick. So here I've pulled the employee ratings data from what we were using before. Again, this is the data that I used as part of my project. I cleaned it up using the data interpreter, and that figured out that most of these are numbers. It realized that these are geographical things, which is good. The only thing I changed was years. It was registering as numbers. And so what it's going to do is it's going to try to count the values. And I actually set it to be an ABC, a string. That way it's not going to treat it as a date. It's going to treat it like it's text. I did that so that it will treat it as categories. If I want to get more specific dates, I can actually switch that, and then I could actually do calendar-y stuff with it, but just not what we're going to do right now. All right, so that is the data setup for what we're going to be doing. And actually, this is an extract instead of being live. Okay, so switching back over to our slides. So the first one of these is our bar plots. And most of you should be very, very familiar with these. We've been doing these forever, whether you're in Excel land or in, I don't know, when we start doing this stuff in like junior high or something. So this is when you have one variable, basically, that's like a IV. So like in this case, we've got the title, the movie titles. So we have Star Wars, Jumanji, etc. And then we have the weekend gross. So we have one number set, or kind of a DV, or not really the DV values. So it's, yeah. So even though that this particular graph has rank in here, that's not necessary. They just did that because they have this ordered by the weekend gross there. So that turns into this type of bar graph. What did the chapter want us to recall? We want our labels to be horizontal. Don't do that pitch thing if you can help it. This one, if you don't like the way that looks, you can easily flip to the long column type. And that makes it pretty and readable, which is great. And then order it sensibly. So here, the story that they're trying to tell you is, or the answer to the question is, what is the highest grossing movie in this particular weekend? We can easily see it's Star Wars. Star Wars was way better than Jumanji, and both of them were like way better than the other three ones. Especially The Greatest Showman and Fahrenheit did not do that great. So that's the story it's trying to tell in here, and so that's the ordering that makes the most sense, right? Flipping back over to Tableau. So creating bar charts is pretty easy over here. We're going to use the overall, and notice that it always wants to do sum. We don't want sums, we want average ratings. And then over here, company is the most sensible type one here. This to me looks pretty ugly. I'd rather have those flipped. This looks pretty ugly that it's so wide. If I can get it to catch. Doop, there we go. And then you can shrink it down like that. If you want to reorder these, if you kind of hover over this top bar. So right now it's alphabetical, which is great if the point of this is to put this in a way so that somebody from Facebook can easily find Facebook, then this is a good way to do it. If the answer to the question is, what is the highest rating? Which company has the highest ratings from Glassdoor? Then that would be the better ordering to do. Do we need to add colors or anything like that to a simple bar chart like this? No. All we want to do really is edit the title to be something like average or for major tech firms, something like that. Okay. Technically average overall. There we go. Cool. Yeah, so you can also edit those things in here and stuff over here. And if you need to widen that up, so the whole company thing, because this is these interactive ones, it kind of is a little funky. It's not like Excel where you have more control over this. You just want to widen that out so we can read company. We can read the bottom part, everything's labeled, so that works. I like to kind of make it so that it's balanced there. There we go, bar. Okay, let's switch back over. Okay, grouped bars is when we have two categorical variables going on. So in this case, we have race and we have age. As a side note, Black should be capitalized, but you know, nothing is perfect. So you can see on the right side is our traditional grouped bar. So here they've used color to help us differentiate the ages, and they've used this lovely gradation. Because age is ordered, it makes sense to do that. It does make, because the color choices, the lightest color here is a little harder to see. So if you do the like pretend you're old thing, kind of squint at it, the light color's gonna go away. So I wouldn't recommend going quite that light, but it does a good overall job of showing that that each age group has the same shape. So if you're looking at the medium income, that's generally going to be in your 30s, 40s to 50s. When you're younger, when you're older, you don't make that much money. But this also shows the major disparities between the different races in America. This graph right here, they have it split up. This makes it a little easier in that there's less like thinking to do, but it also, I don't know, I find these a little easier to read, even though the book is saying that they find these a little easier to read. So it's kind of personal preferences for which one. How do we do these in Tableau? And of course, the same things apply to all these in terms of the readability of labels and stuff. Okay, so Tableau, we're going to switch back to you. All right, so what we need is one more category, and here I'm going to use job status. So this is, we had former employees and current employees in the Glassdoor ratings. So what we can do is job status, we can drop that here, and that automatically created some colors for us. This is not that cute. You can see, so it automatically treated this a little differently. It just is like a table sort of a format in the labeling, which is still very clear. It's not as clean looking as the other ones were, but we also have our legend over here. And you can highlight the ones that you want by clicking on the legends. If we wanted to do things like add the values, oh, nope, that's not what we want. We want the average overall. There we go. Remove, then switch that to average. So you can add things like that. But even though now we have very precise information, it's also very busy. And it made it actually harder to read in a way, right? So we probably don't want to add that, even though we can. So just as a side note. Okay. If we wanted to switch this up, we could actually switch this to a split graph type. And again, because they're so tall, they get a little hard to read. It's unnecessarily tall for a 5-point graph. There we go. That's a little easier. So here we have it grouped as the current employees here with the former employees over here. We could switch that to do it that way. That's less intense on the eyes and maybe tells a little bit of a better story to split it like that. So you can see that anytime you have two categorical variables, you might need to play with the grouping, which one is which, to see which one tells the better story and which one looks better visually, which one's easier to read. These, it kind of makes sense to order alphabetically, because if the patterns of these were very different, it'd be very hard to order by value. I think just there's another way of doing the ordering, but we could also just do it that way. I forgot the other way that I was doing it. But this way we can see and notice how these actually are ordered within the categories. So Facebook has the best ratings for current employees. Google has the best ratings for former employees. And again, if we wanted to switch these around, we can switch around like that and order it like that. And that's actually a little bit easier to read than what we had before. The company is cut off, and so if we just slip that there so we can read everything, there we go. All right, so that's a little bit easier to read. Yeah, so that is group bars, both are split and are actual groups. Okay, I'm gonna switch back over. To our stack bars. So this one also uses two categorical groups. This one is what you need to use when the actual sum is important. So in this case, we're looking at the number of passengers for the Titanic. And so, yeah, the gender split is interesting, but the sum is also interesting. So caveats to this, they're harder to compare the groups. This particular one has the labels inside of them, which is great, but they don't have a side axis on there. So to know how many third class passengers there are, you have to actually add them together. And that's not really what you want in a visual. You want it to be like super fast. You don't want to have to sit there and do your own math. If I had to do my own math, I'd rather have it in a table that had totals for me. And also if you have a lot of categories in there, or a lot of values inside the categories, it gets really hard to interpret. So how do we do that in Tableau? Switching back. This is our stack bars. They make no sense with the data we have here. I don't think I have actually good data for this. Oh, can also just transpose like that. Magic button right there. Oh, there's my other button that I was looking for. Yeah, so you can order like that. Yeah, this doesn't make sense because we're on 5-point scale ratings. So this would be an awful graph that is just plain wrong. Yeah, I don't have a legit count type variable in here though. So that's that we're gonna do. So we're gonna undo that mess because that is bad. Okay. But as long as you know where the buttons are, that is the point. All right. Our next one are dot plots. So this is when you have so many groups inside your category that having a bar graph is visually distracting and doesn't look good. It really only makes sense if you are ordering these for patterns. So this is getting into more, I don't want to say big data because it could just be a list of categories or countries or something, and that's not really big data, but it's data that's large enough that you don't actually read all the values on the left side. Like usually when it gets like this, like you're only picking out the information that you want, like the top and the bottoms. So that's when getting rid of a lot of the lines in there and just reducing it to the dots can be helpful. And notice how helpful these background lines are for tracking those dots. If we had a blank empty space like this background, it might be kind of hard to follow along and see what's going on there. Okay, so switching back over to Tableau, I'm going to actually, okay, so we don't want job status anymore, so I'm going to remove that. I'm actually going to take company off as well. I'm going to take that off of here, and we're going to do countries, just like that one. So you can see how this is just a lot in a hot mess. Like having it there is terrible. I am going to actually add that on there for us. Switch to average, and I'm going to try to make this in our viewing pane so we can actually read it. So yeah, let's do some ordering. So at least we have that. So we can see the values here, but it's so much. How do we switch that? over here in the marks, so our bar graphs are automatically bars, but here you can, like, bad idea, don't do lines there, but if this was dates, that'd work. Again, area, not a good idea for this one. But you get to circles, so now we have our little dots. Yeah. So again, like I was saying, notice how it's a little hard to read. I'm gonna bring this in a little bit more. It's a little hard to read going across the way it's automatically set. So I added the little values in there to help us out. I kind of like them, but definitely don't need to have those on there. You can take those off just as easily and just have it by the pattern. That might be a little easier if this was brought up higher, so you have the axis closer. There you go. That might be a little bit easier, so you can actually see the axis and the dot wherever you're looking for the dot if you don't have the labels on there. I did not think ahead of trying to see if I can get that background, so I'm going to pause this for just a second. Gonna pause the recording. Okay, so if we go to format and lines, we get this, and over here we can add the horizontal lines to the rows, and that way we can get a little extra help in tracking along, like if we're interested in the Dominica specifically, and tracking along and making sure that we're hitting the right dock as we're going around. Yeah, so that's how we do that, and you can see that you can change the grid lines a lot. There's a lot of customization that you can do with that. Okay, all right, so that is our dots, and let's continue on to our, nope. Sorry, to our PowerPoint. And the last one in here is our heat maps. Okay, so here, this is really meant for big data type stuff where we're looking for patterns rather than looking for just the specific values. So the more and more data we have, the more we're not even paying attention to exactly what number. If we wanted to know the exact numbers, we'd be looking at tables, basically. So here, you pretty much always want to have it ordered by some value, whatever you're trying to do in the story, basically. What are you trying to show people in this? In this example, we're looking at internet adopted over time for the select list of countries. So it's ordered by the percent of internet users for the specific country and year. All right, so how do we get heat maps in Tableau? So, switching over one last time for this set. Back to Tableau. Okay, so our magic button is this one right here. I know it doesn't really look like a heat map, but that is what it is. Okay, so here we need to have more data. But I'm going to add here, because you usually only have big stuff, is I'm going to add in years. Let's see. Had this, nope, hold on one second. Okay, I just had, yeah, I forgot that this wasn't set up right. So you want to make sure that your, whatever your value is, so for us, the overall ratings, you put it on the color. So I just have this organized by years and country, the same way the example one was. And there we go, that's more colorful colorful version. Okay, so this looks very, very, very different from the heat map that we had in the example. Why is that? We have a lot of missing data in our data set here. So basically, like in the Cayman Islands, there's no ratings for any of those companies all the way up until 2018. So you can see that while the heat map looks cool, it's really only going to actually look good if you don't have missing data. So that's something to keep in mind for a heat map of that big impact. But if saying that you don't have missing data like this, heat map dimension there, add in your value as color and your rows and columns up here. And that's it. Okay, so that's mounts, and we'll switch on to distributions.